Hey guys, I just got back from another expedition, and this time I brought back another vintage TV. Shocking, I know, and it's an Admiral. It's not in the greatest condition, but I had a couple reasons for getting this. One, it's a sister set to two other sets I've got, and the owner threw in what's in this box. I'll show you what's in here in a bit. First, I want to get this out of my car. I broke it down for transport so it wouldn't get damaged. As usual, there were only one or two bolts holding this whole thing together, so if I tried to pick it up as it would have been a disaster. Especially the main power supply chassis. Just one wood screw holding this whole massive thing in place. And a couple bolts holding the chassis as well. So this set has a split chassis, power supply audio amp on the bottom, and then the rest of the set on this chassis, which sits up top. When I slid this chassis out, this capacitor came falling out of it. So this must have been an old attempt at a repair. 40 microfarad, 450 volt, which is what half of one of these main filter caps is, so I suspect there's a bad section on one or two of these, because I don't think there are any. Oh, no, I guess there is. I guess there is a couple major filter caps on this one. I have not restored this particular set, this Admiral chassis before. It's the 30A1 chassis, which is the first Admiral chassis. It looks similar to the ones I did in that Bakelite set recently, the 24A12, but this is different. I'll show you some more details. There are subtle differences once I get this up and inside. I think the picture tube might be good. It doesn't appear to have lost its vacuum, and the base is still attached, although a bit loose. I got this from the widow of a man who had been lugging this thing around for decades, long before they ever got married. She wasn't sure what the exact story was, but she said that he had always hoped to get it fixed and running again someday, so it may very well have been some kind of family heirloom. It's not in the greatest shape though, like I said. Rusty chassis, that's nothing I haven't dealt with before. All the tubes are there, it's including some nice old style, like this 5U4 rectifier, the old ST type. The real bad though is the cabinet. I guess it could be worse. It has the original grill cloth, it's okay, none of the bits have broken off, but the veneer, it's in really sad shape. Big chunks gone off the side and on the top as well. This corner was worn off here. We got separation of the cabinet. This foot's about to fall off. This whole bottom's loose here. Again, nothing I haven't dealt with before, but it'd be nice to have to do not have to do quite so much work. The control area is pretty bad too. The decals have been virtually obliterated. It's very faded, very rough. All the original finish is gone. So, if I decide to restore the set, which is what I'm leaning towards right now, I will have to strip off the veneer. I'll probably just re-veneer both sides entirely and the top, and I'll have to glue up all these joints and fill in all the dings. Alright, so with it broken down, it is much easier to carry. The cabinet weighs almost nothing. It's probably like 30 pounds or so, and equally these weigh probably 30-40 pounds each. Altogether very heavy, like this in 3 pieces. I can carry it up 2 flights of stairs to my place by myself. I hauled everything up inside to my back porch so we can take a closer look at it now. So here's the cabinet, right side up. And here's the veneer damage I was talking about. Chipped there, whole section gone off the back. And along the back on the side here, it's also lifted off, and the bottom is really miserable. Front's not bad though. And that's the key thing, this is actual solid wood. Oh, a bit of separation there, but that could be flattened out and glued back. This must have been stored in a damp environment, so that's what I figured. That would account for the rust and the wood warping. And that side isn't too bad, except this back corner. But instead of trying to patch all this stuff up, it might just be easier to re-veneer the whole thing, because then all the sides would look look the same. And veneer isn't that bad because these days you can get large sheets. So this whole top would be one piece and each side would just be one big piece. But we'll see. For now though, I'll just leave it the way it is. And as you can see, the decals are also virtually obliterated. We've got Admiral here. Barely see contrast and brightness. Horizontal, vertical, that's not too bad. Off volume focus. What really bugs me though is the channel numbers. So I want to know if this set might have had channel 1 on it. Can barely make out channel sharp tuning. And then just a hint of a 13, a 12, and an 11. But even those are barely visible, and then all the numbers over here are just completely obliterated. The reason I'm curious is that I have heard and read about the earliest Admirals having a different kind of tuner. For one, it went down to channel 1, and 2, it was a different design than all their subsequent tuners. I've only seen pictures of them. This set might very well have had it, but doesn't anymore. First thing I noticed right away on this set when I saw it is that the channel tuning shaft is sticking way out here, way farther than the others. And when I flip this on its side, hang on. Alright, when I looked underneath, I noticed right away that this mounting tab was really bent. It should be nice and square and flush like the other three. So what I think happened is somebody bent this up and out of the way and replaced the original tuner. This looks awfully similar to later Admiral tuners. There's a part number on it. I'll have to check that out. It might be an Admiral tuner, but I suspect it's not the original. Barely turns. I'm sure I could use some oil. So it's kind of a drag. It's not the original tuner. Although I do have a spare tuner from an Admiral 20X chassis that might work in this Admiral 30 chassis. Otherwise, I think it's pretty much all original, including a nice, friendly daddy long legs. There were a few spiders in this when I got it. I got out the biggest, nastiest one right away. So all the controls look to be okay, including the very difficult to find combination focus rheostat, volume control, and power switch. I believe this crazy looking assembly is actually all original, including the selenium rectifier. They use this to rectify the filament from AC to DC for one of the tubes, I think, in the tuner to reduce any possible noise or interference. Got the nice old original sand resistors that are so crappy because they corrode and burn out. This might be a replacement. Come on, spider, get out of there. There he is. This is cadmium plated. It's got that nice cadmium oxide look about it. I'll be sure to wash my hands. Yeah, this tuner is definitely different from the other Admirals I've seen because it has a lead shield around this tube. I've only seen that in, I think, some RCAs. They would do that to reduce microphonics on the tube, which I think is some type of oscillation or vibration that can build up inside there and mess up the tuner and mixer. Have not checked the all-important picture tube yet, but it's not the original. It's a CBS Hytron. It's also a 10 BP4A. I've not encountered one of those before. All the rest I have are just straight 10 BP4s. I think that means there's like a gray tinge to the front glass that eliminates reflections. So I'll test the picture tube and I'll check the flyback, or at least take a look at the flyback in a moment. And one final disappointment. Knobs. So, one outer knob, one inner knob, outer knob, inner knob, outer knob, inner knob. This bigger guy is the sharp tuning, fine tuning, and I have no channel knob. that would have originally gone on the original shaft, which would have been here. Those are a colossal pain in the ass to find. I've got one on this set here. This set was also missing one. In fact, I think I've had 3 or 4 Admirals that were missing these, and sometimes it takes me months, many months of looking to find these, and they get scarcer and scarcer every time. So who knows when and if I'll ever find one. However, I have seen some sets that just use one of these for the channel clunker, and I do have some spare knobs like this, so I'll go with that for now. I haven't been unable to confirm if the early sets did in fact use one of these or not. It's definitely nicer to have that elongated tail because it gives you some grip when you're turning the channel, because these take some force to rotate. And here's the power supply. I think I was wrong earlier. I said this was a 5U4. This is the 5U4. This. Oh, wait a minute. This is a 5U4. Hang on. What's going on here? Just use 2 5U4s? 5U4, 5U4. 6x6. This is the audio output tube, so. You know, I don't think that's right. I'm almost positive the set uses a 5U4 and a 5Y3, so that just might have been some really crappy replacement idea by somebody. Speaking of crappy, the center pin is missing from this 6Y6. I got a few spares, so not the end of the world. Otherwise, you kind of have to eyeball it when you put this back in, because the centering key is missing. So I think it goes right about there. It's cool to get these old style 5U4s. They're a little bit scarcer, harder to find, but I think they look a lot cooler than the more modern variety. That connector goes to the speaker, and the audio from the top chassis comes in here to this RCA jack and goes to this preamp and the final output tube. So this bottom chassis, I believe this is the main power transformer, and this is the choke. Got some rectifiers here. I think it's another choke, and filter caps, and then the audio amp. So they put all the big iron down on the bottom, makes the top chassis a bit lighter. It's also a lot nicer to work on these with 2 separate chassis. They connect together with this big umbilical cord and connector here. So I mentioned the speaker just now. Let's take a look at that down here. Looked at it briefly before. It looked to be in pretty good shape. It's a field coil speaker, so they must use that as yet another choke. So a pretty elaborate power supply. 2 rectifier tubes, big power transformer, and I think two other chokes in the main supply there. All the early Admirals I have all have this same notice in here about there being a matching radio and phonograph console. I've seen pictures of one once, and somebody in my area claims to have one. I've never seen one up close, but I'd really like to get one someday. And finally, there is the model number, 30A14S. And there's the tube layout. Yeah, it should be a 5U4 and a 5Y3. That's what I thought. So that one tube is not at all correct. Now, I mentioned that there was one other thing I got with this that made it a much sweeter deal. And that's what's in this box over here. It's bigger and heavier than I expected, which makes it more interesting, but a little bit hard to carry around. I'm not quite sure where I'm going to put it, but what it is, it's a bubble magnifier, but a big one. I showed one of these in an earlier video, I think a couple years ago. If you search around on my channel for, I think magnifier, you should be able to find it. It's in really good shape. This one spot here, I think that's just some latex paint that should come off easily. Unlike my other one, which is a solid piece of I think lucite or something like that, this is actually filled with some type of oil, maybe like linseed oil. It's tough to tell because there are no bubbles. It's actually quite well filled in, but There's one or two little particles I can find floating around if I just catch it right. I think this was the fill valve. See, it goes down inside. I've seen these before, and they invariably had a bubble of air that got in there over time from the stuff evaporating or leaking out. So it's really amazing that it hasn't. And this sucker is big and it is heavy. Well, I can't possibly lift it with one hand, or just barely. Probably 25, 30 pounds, I'm guessing. And somewhere in here are the support bars. You can kind of see where they burned into the top here. And there's a screw on the back here that would have held it in place. So let's see if I can get this set up. Okay, here are the support bars. Must be more to it than this. So these would have attached to either side through the two holes on the side there. But that's not quite enough to hold on the set. Ah, here we go. Yeah, I thought I saw some other stuff in here. Okay, I see how this goes now. So these go on the set. One still has a pad. I'm sure the other one had one too at some point to protect the top of the set. So these would attach down like this, and they get secured via a wood screw in the back. Put one on either side. And these attach to the magnifier. And let's see, this one would go on this side. And they hang down in front, and they slide into this channel so you can adjust it. So, like so. You'd hang it down in front of the set. This to me looks too big for a 10-inch picture tube. I think this is more like for a 12-inch picture tube, but I'll rig it up and see if I can get it to fit on there. A few of the spacing washers are missing, but I did manage to mount it back onto the TV, and I put a little lantern inside so we get some backlighting. It's pretty insane, I gotta say. Let's better look at it with some lights on. It does magnify quite a bit. So I mounted those two rails on top, and then mounted these side rails on with these, and here's where some of the spacers are missing, so this is a little loose on this side. So this comes around and they twisted it just the right angle so it slides into these. I can actually move this in and out a bit to get it lined up. Here's the back side. So as I showed in my previous video, it helps a bit, but you have to be looking at the right angle. If you go to either side, it gets really distorted. I don't want to put this on another set because I don't want to mark it up, but hey, eventually I will get this working, and we can see this in action. It should be pretty trippy. For now, though, I think what I'll leave off with tonight is I will test this picture tube. Alright, I've been having way too much bad luck with these picture tubes lately, so got my fingers crossed. Pulled out my trusty old B&K 440, got it set up for this picture tube, and let's give it a try. It's so dirty, can't even see if the filament's glowing. Yep, filament is glowing. Of course you guys can't see that with these camera lights on. There she goes. And got one light on like it should be. Ideally we get 2 half moons. It means there are no shorts. And so the way it usually goes, G1 kicks in, then G2 slowly follows. Let's jump ahead to emissions. Yeah, pretty weak, I kind of figured. As I've said so many times before, you gotta wait a while. So we'll wait for that to warm up a bit. How about we pop open this high voltage cover and see what lurks inside. Do have the original power cord, which is integral. Well, spoke too soon. Okay, I have a power cord, not the original. Somebody drilled out the original rivets and mounted this on with some nuts and bolts. Alright, I have to get a 1/4" nut driver so I can slide this out. I got the cover off, but not in the way I expected. I loosened up all the screws and the whole kind of side came apart. I say that's odd because, well, I'll show you how the other sets I've got work. Here's the back side of my 3812 set, which is in rather good condition, although it was a bit rusty when I first got it, so I did remove the rust from the high voltage cover and painted it. But as you can see on this, when you loosen it up, the inner part slides out and the whole rest of it, the sides and all that, remain, and this is just a piece of, like an L-shaped piece that slides in. But otherwise it looks just like the other one. The flybacks look the same, and the high voltage resistor there and all the rest of it. So I don't know, this set may have more than one modification on it. So back to this one again. Now maybe this is the original, and maybe this set's a little bit older than that other one. Hard to say. I'll have to ask around, maybe compare it to some other guys' sets online. Also see a fuse here, which again I don't think was there on the original set, but definitely a good idea. That's usually a 1/4 amp fuse that limits the current going to the horizontal output tube. This big guy back here and the flyback so they don't burn out. Here's the 5V4 damper tube. There's a little high voltage doorknob capacitor that filters the 9,000 or so volts going to the picture tube. And there's a high voltage rectifier. It's cool to get these old style tubes like I mentioned with the 5U4 rectifier. Should be a BG6. That's the original Admiral, or at least it's an original Admiral tube. Similar to an 807 tube that they used in early transmitters. So it's rusty, it's filthy, it's a few odd modifications possibly, but otherwise looks to be in pretty good shape. So instead of the center part sliding off, the whole side just kind of slides in. Something like that. Weird. I bet this has been modified, but somebody would have had to have cut some metal, pop some rivets on and such. I don't know. It is what it is. Nobody else would even notice or care other than me, I'm sure. So back to this. Alright, that's more like it. Got the emissions up in the good range. So go back to here. Got both the half moons are nice and bright. Emissions up into the good range. And cutoffs responding. No, I did bump this up to 7 volts for a while to kind of accelerate the process of reviving this. Just turn it off and go back to 6.3. I mean, just the fact that it's even edging into the good region, it's only been on for about 15-20 minutes or so. So this is actually a pretty good tube. I'll let this sit for a couple hours. It'll probably get well over 600 or more, I bet. So I guess that's about it for now. So now that I've got a 3812 and a 3814 and a 3816, all with more or less identical chassis, I think I might as well restore all three simultaneously, at least the insides. So it's just a final reminder. This is the 3814, which is the mahogany cabinet. And this is the 3812, which is Admiral's very first set, and quite distinctive looking from their others. One of my favorites for sure. And this is the 3816, which is an identical cabinet to the 3814, but this has the very cool and hard to find limed oak finish. I switched from the B&K 440 to my Sencor CR70, which is more accurate for testing but more finicky to hook up. So I normally use the 440 to see if a tube has some life. Then I use this to really evaluate it, and I'm happy to say that this tests fantastic. It's well into the good range for emissions, and the life test is just rock solid. So when I push this button, the needle just barely moves. What this button does is cut the juice to the filament, and for a weaker tube the needle will drop right away. So very nice after my last few sets to get a picture tube that is this strong. So as always, I have a million projects to do, and I've got a few in the pipeline ahead of these. But maybe this fall I'll get around to them, and I'll certainly do all three at the same time, which should make it go a lot faster, because I can get all three up at the same time and compare and contrast. If there's one problem with one of them, I can compare it to another, and so on. So it should go a lot faster. That's all for tonight. I hope you enjoyed this video.